All right. Welcome to another episode of Seven Story Podcast. I know we were out of commission a little bit last week, but hey, got a full-time job and stuff, so had to work on establishing a rhythm and things like that. But we're back for today at least, so let's try to have a good chat. Here we have Bobby Nash, who is, as you guessed it, another author. That's pretty much the theme right here. Go ahead, Bobby. Just introduce yourself to the people and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here. I'm Bobby Nash. I write all kinds of stuff. I do novels, comic books, short stories, things of that nature. I've also, in the past few years, have added writing full cast audio drama scripts. I've written a
Mm,
couple of short films that have been made, stuff like that. But primarily it's novels and comics is where I do most of my stuff. I'm lucky. I get to bounce around a lot of genres. I primarily do a lot of crime fiction, mysteries, thrillers. I like to kill people. It's fun. In my books, Uh, but so I do a lot of that. But I also do a lot of work for hire. I do some sci-fi, horror, media
right.
tie-in stuff. Getting to write other either TV, movie, or corporate-owned characters. I do that from time to time, like Zorro or the Green Hornet or the Lone Ranger, stuff like that. I get to write those characters as well, which is a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun
Oh,
playing with those characters you grew up with.
yeah.
It's really fun.
Oh, nice, nice. All right. So, what's a day in the life like for you?
Oh man, this is going to be a very boring show. um, this is my first. This is my full time job.
Right.
I take care of my dad. So we live together. My dad and I live together, and so early in my first of my day is usually spent with him. Doctors, errands. We go have lunch. We go whatever. So that's
Yeah.
usually the start of my day. Is not writing related. It's doing other stuff,
Right.
and then usually by I don't know 2, 3, 4 ish in the afternoon, I'm home. Then I go to the office. Once I get him settled in, I go to the office and I work uh, for several hours. And I start with doing. Usually, the first thing I start with is the business side of things,
Right.
answering emails, setting up podcasts, doing interviews, setting up conventions, all that kind of updating websites, all the usual that.
Oh,
So
yeah.
yeah, do that first, get that out of the way, update all the social medias, and then I go and I start to work. And I work, also any phone calls or whatever needs to happen and do all that. And then I'll write up until when I go make dinner. And so I'll write till that point. I watch TV while I eat dinner, and then I do art. I'm also do art, which I do at night, which I do after dinner. It's kind of I write about murder and mayhem during the day.
Right.
So at night I draw to get murder and mayhem out of my head. Um,
Right. Got you. Got
so I do that, and then usually after couple hours of that, I will come back to the writing office and I will write into till like 1, 2 in the morning.
right.
And we'll get some more stuff done that way because it's quiet. The house is everybody's asleep. It's quiet. I can turn on a little
Yeah.
music and I can write. And I write. I'm very productive in the evening time, so I'll
Right.
write until that, then watch a little TV, and then go to bed. So that,
Hey.
and then lather, rinse, repeat every day. It's pretty much the same during the week.
Got
The weekends are usually more event driven,
you. Mm,
conventions or bookstore signings or other events that I do around the work.
right.
And so that happens on the weekend. So yeah, it's weird. I've got the backwards type of job where I sleep late during the
Yeah.
week and get up early on the weekends.
Oh, yeah. Like, oh my God. I mean, hey, I
It's
mean,
but it's fun. But it's easier to get up early when it's something you enjoy getting up early for. um,
right.
you know, and I don't have to, my commute is simple. I used to commute an hour to work every day or an hour
Oh,
and a
yeah.
half to work. The commute now is across the hall from my bedroom to my office.
Hey,
So, that's not
can't
bad.
beat that.
Yeah.
You
So,
cannot beat
and
that.
I can work comfortably. I can wear sweatpants or, in
Yeah.
the summer I can wear shorts and, it's comfortable. I don't have to dress up and yeah.
Right.
anything that keeps me from having to put a suit and tie on. I mean, this is about as dressy as it gets. I mean,
Yeah,
that's it's
look, I mean,
yeah.
when you can work the way you want to, I mean, I think that's a sign
Well,
that you're doing well in life. So,
there's a
hey,
lot to be said for being comfortable and
yep,
productivity while you're comfortable. So yeah, it's nice.
right.
But that's my day.
So,
So yeah, so it is.
got
This is why there's no reality shows about writers, because there
yeah,
would be hours of us going, and then every once in a while we'd cuss at the monitor and then go back to.
yeah,
So yeah.
right, definitely, I got you. So, all right, so what inspired your, latest work? Let's go with that. Like, what was the thing
Um,
that, what's the thing that like gets you into that, space for writing, like, when it comes to your work in general?
it's usually characters. Usually the characters, especially when like my characters that I created, and like the guys on the posters. These guys talk to me.
Right.
Oh, I've got. Wouldn't it be cool if I did this, or. And so
Yeah.
usually in those for those characters, it's that. It's I know those characters. Those characters want to tell me a story. They want to do a story. And so it's just getting in their headspace, and we go. And so for the stuff that's mine, that's kind of the inspiration. It's just what hell can I put these guys through?
Right.
Um, but the other half of my work, I do a lot of work for hire. So
Right.
that inspiration's different, because that inspiration is more a publisher calls me or emails me and goes, "Hey, how would you like to write?" And then they say, and so then it's either yes or no. Am I
Right.
excited? Because sometimes not everything. Sometimes you say no. I know that's not for me. But
Right.
for the
Right.
most part, it's pretty cool. It's like, "Hey, would you like to write the Lone Ranger?" Yes, I would. Would you like to
Right.
write Zorro? Yes, I would.
Right.
That kind of thing. So it's that. But yeah, for the most part, it's just getting to know the characters and seeing where they'll take me. That's usually where I start. And then
Okay.
I put them through hell.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
So would you say your stories are more like, I mean, you do comic books, so
Hmm.
it'd be kind of obvious. Like, so are your stories more like character driven or, world driven?
More
Like once
character.
you, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely more character. I generally start with the characters, and because sometimes you'll get an idea for a story, and then it's
Right.
which character is that story for? Because
Mm,
I've got this idea. Well, that's not a snow story, so maybe it's this other guy. And so figuring out who works best for what story,
okay.
because not every character fits every story, or
Right.
like one character could solve a problem in 10 minutes and it's a very quick story, whereas it would be a bigger problem for if it was this character having to deal with it. So yeah, I
Right.
always kind of start with character, and then how does that plot affect the character? Not
Right.
just dropping it in and say solve a problem. How does this story affect the character, and what does it do to the character? And
Right.
that's where I have more fun, is seeing how the characters react, respond. Does it change them? Does it hurt them or help them, or things like that? So that's where I like playing with, is seeing what the characters will do and how they get to where they where they get to go.
Right. Okay. Got you. Got you. I don't know. I would say I have to agree. Like, if I'm writing a story, I focus more on the characters than the world because, um, the characters are what makes the story interesting.
Hmm. Well,
But
and a lot of the crime and doing the crime fiction stuff. I mean, it's the
yeah,
real world, so I don't have
yeah,
to invent the wheel. I mean,
right,
I have invented towns, fictional towns, just because I want things that the real town doesn't have. But yeah, like, I don't have to reinvent the wheel. If I say they use a cell phone, the reader knows what
right,
a cell phone is, and so I don't have
right,
to. Yeah, it's not like a sci-fi or a fantasy world where I've got to build all of that in most cases. So
right.
yeah.
Definitely. Gotcha. So, okay. So, like, how do you come up with your characters? Like, I know you say that your characters talk to you, like the
Hmm.
characters on the posters, but how do you come up with them? Like, are they spontaneous or are they more so planned in regards to a story?
Most of the time, they're probably more spontaneous, and then the planning happens as we go. Like I
Mm-hmm.
learn more as I go. There are some characters that that have percolated for years
Yeah.
before I find the story that's for them. And then there are others where necessity makes them happen. Like I'll
Right.
give you an example, like the Snow character,
Right.
which I write, it's a crime fiction adventure series, and that came along. A buddy of mine called me and says, "Hey, I'm working for this new publisher, and they're looking for some crime stuff." And he wanted I mentioned your name to him. Would you be willing to talk to him and pitch him something? And I'm like, sure. So I'm thinking, oh, I'll have some time to put something together. So I get off the phone with my friend, and the phone
Mm.
rings, and it's the publisher going, "Okay, give me your pitch." It's like I've known about this for a minute and a half. So I started pulling. It was actually a kit bash of like 3 ideas that I had in my head,
Right.
that were not fully fleshed out. So I kind of like grabbed 3 things, slammed them
Mm-hmm.
together, pulled the name Snow out of thin air,
Right.
pitched that. They liked it. And
Right.
then once the pitch was approved, then it's like, okay, now I got to make this work. Then the planning kind
Right.
of started. So sometimes that necessity of, oh God, what am I going to
Right.
do, helps.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so it worked. It can work either way. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I find that my characters when I write stories are they're typically it's like they're a mixture of it's like they're spontaneous as in they happen in my head, but they're
Hmm.
also meticulously planned in my head. So it's
Yeah.
like the spontaneity only goes so far as like
Yeah.
I don't write them down before I write them down on the story.
Yeah. All right. Like I know them pretty well, but then
Yeah,
in the course of writing the story, sometimes things surprise me that come out about them. Or
yeah,
oh, I didn't realize that you did this. I should make a
yeah,
note of that, for
right?
future reference, or, little things like that. So sometimes in writing the characters, I build those layers. I mean, they still
Yeah,
feel like real people to me when I start. Like
yeah,
like I kind of know who they are, but I do learn things
right,
about them. And then I keep good notes whenever important things like that, I add them to
yeah,
the character detail.
right.
So when you get multiple books into something, that's
Hmm.
when the memory starts going. It's like, wait, what was that thing he did in high
Yeah,
school?
then you
Or
gotta go back and look
yeah,
into
it's
the
like,
pages and like, oh man,
yeah. And so
that's
so
really
having those
yeah,
notes helps me for those
right,
type of details. It's like, oh, this is stuff we would mention again. Um, you know.
right,
So yeah, so I do that. And that, especially like I said, once you get multiple books deep into something, you know,
yeah,
and you're probably like me, there's so many characters in your head talking to you that
yeah,
sometimes you get them mixed up. And so having those notes, it's like,
yeah,
wait, which character did this? Or wait,
right,
which character quit smoking? What, I can't remember.
yeah.
And so yeah, that helps. And so yeah, listening to the characters helps a lot.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely agree. I would say like I don't really do like trilogies and more books like that. I like to keep it to a standalone or a
Hmm.
duology if I could. But if it goes into a trilogy, okay, cool. And
Yeah.
I kind of like to keep a low number of characters, like no more than like maybe 5 to
Yeah.
7, because after that, it's kind of like, okay, now you got to keep track of everybody and where they
Hmm.
are in the story, and you know, then you got to make them out to be real people, and then you know, you got to kind of predict the unpredictable in that process. But I
Absolutely.
definitely understand what you mean, though. Like
Yeah.
just having the
Well,
characters in your head like that.
yeah. Well, I do series of stuff, but
Right.
I also do. I want to make sure each book tells a whole story. As a
Right.
reader, I am not a fan of getting to the end of a book and reading the words "to be continued." I am not a
Right.
fan. I don't. I want something. I don't mind if the story continues, but wrap up
Right.
the A plot. And so
Right.
with my series stuff, I do that. The main plot of this book would get wrapped up. There may be stuff leading to the next story, but
Right.
I want the reader, because that way, if they just read one book and decide they never want to read anything else I've written, they still get a full story.
Right.
But yeah. So now, what kind of genres do you write?
I write fiction, and sometimes I dabble in a little nonfiction, but I mainly
Hmm.
write fantasy, like dark fantasy.
I
I'll do
gotcha.
a little horror. I'll do some short stories. Very occasionally, I'll do some poetry, but
Hmm.
but honestly, I haven't been writing in like a couple months. So I've been more so like the publisher. So
Gotcha, gotcha.
yeah. So
Yeah, it's definitely
oh,
different hats. Yeah, I publish a few of my books.
yeah,
So pretty much that. I haven't really. The only time I've ever published someone that's not me is for one of my books. I had some writers come in and do short stories with my characters. So I
right.
publish people that way, but I have not. Yeah, so I'm like a more of a me publisher than a publishing other people's stuff.
Yeah. Oh no,
But
I publish other people's stuff.
yeah, yeah, I checked out your website, when we
Yeah.
were setting all this up and looking at some of the stuff that you guys do. I don't
Yeah.
do a lot of fantasy. I do a little, not a lot. Um, I do a
Yeah.
lot of sci-fi. I do horror. Horror I do quite
Oh
frequently.
yeah.
But I don't do like sword and sorcery type or
Yeah.
that kind of
Definitely.
fantasy. I've done a little urban fantasy, but yeah, fantasy's just
Right.
not. I'm not as. It's not as much me. I'm not as.
Yeah, definitely. But
But
we have
it's.
we have a category for pretty much everything though. So
Hmm.
like whatever short story, let's say you wanted to submit a short story with us, whatever short story you submit, we would find a place for it. So if
Cool,
it
very
was
nice.
crime, if it was, horror, if it was, psychological thrillers or, something in that
Mhm.
nature, then we would find a place for it. So
Yeah, and
yeah.
anthologies are a wonderful place for writers to practice something that's outside the norm. Like if you're a
Yeah.
sci-fi writer, but you want to write a crime story, a lot of
Yeah.
times publishers will go, "Well, you're a sci-fi writer, you can't write crime." But an
Right.
anthology is a great place for you to kind of dip your toe into that
Yeah.
genre, play around with it, see if you like it. Um,
Right.
I've done that with anthologies where I was like, "Oh, I'd never written a western before. Let me pitch a western to see if I
Right.
like it." And it's easier to do that to test the waters with a short story than it is
Yeah.
with a novel that's
Oh
going to
yeah.
take you months and months and months to write. So
Oh
yes,
yeah.
I love doing anthologies. Anthologies are fun. It's
Right.
um, a fun way to play in other genres or with other characters. Um,
Right.
because sometimes I've done work with other writers, well, kind of like what I did, where I had writers come in and write my characters. Other writers have
Yeah.
invited me to come in and do a short story with their characters, and so that's
Right.
fun. It's fun playing with other people's toys, and as long as you don't
Yeah.
break them, and yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. So, what's the most difficult part about being a writer, in your opinion?
L- Uh, being a professional writer, learning to live without a steady paycheck.
Oh man.
Just as a writer in general, making the time to write.
Mm,
Because when I started, I had a full time job and I was working. I worked full time days, and then actually I was going to school then too. So I was doing days, days at the job. Night I'd go to school in the evenings, and then at night I would write.
right.
Um, so it's not. There's the world seems determined to find ways to keep us from writing. And
Right.
we as writers love to procrastinate.
Ah,
What's that old joke about? I'm a writer, so today I'm going to write, but first, and then
right.
I'm going to clean the office. Oh, I can't write till the office is clean. Oh, I
Oh,
can't write till the dishes are done. Oh,
right.
so we're our own worst enemy sometimes. So
Right.
the thing for me was learning how to, like, you never find the time to write. You have to make the time. So for
Right.
me, it was learning how to carve out, because you have to give up something. It's like,
Yeah.
for me, it was like I love to watch TV. I still love to watch TV, but it's like, okay, instead of watching 3 hours a night, I'm going to watch one, you know, and get that way. So it's all about learning that.
Yeah.
And so that was probably the hardest for me. Yeah. But
Okay.
as a professional writer who does this full time, I don't collect a weekly paycheck. I get
Ah,
paid either when a publisher pays me to write something, or when royalties come in,
right.
or when I do events and sell books. That's when money comes in. So it's
Okay.
so it's not always on a steady. You're going to get paid on this day of the month. You don't always know that. So
Right.
you have to be fluid in how you do those things. It's
Okay.
what is it? Feast or famine, I think is what it's called. Yeah, it's
Okay. Yeah, that's true.
yeah.
You
And
know,
there's
sometimes you get paid and you be like, "Oh, okay,
yeah,
nice."
and
And other times you're
and
like, "No."
it's a wonderful, and you don't always know when that money's coming. So it's like one day you'll get up and you'll check your email. Oh, I got a royalty check. Great. All right.
Nice.
I mean, pay some bills real quick. Yeah, it's but it's fun. But it's a great, like I said, it's a great job. I love it. I get to sit here and make stuff up all day. Um,
Right.
it's allowed me to travel. It's allowed me to meet people.
Yeah.
It's allowed me to learn a lot. One of the best things I learned as a writer was research is awesome, and
Mm,
people love talking about their jobs.
right.
I spent a day with the FBI. I've spent
Mhm.
time with SWAT teams. I've spent time with Secret Service agents, et cetera, et cetera. And to learn, to what people do.
Yeah.
So you get an insight into that, as opposed to just making it up. So those are
Right.
fun. So I've gotten to travel. I do cons, and I've met a lot of people. I've met some people who have become like lifelong friends, and I met them because I'm doing conventions or so those are the nice benefits
Right.
of the job. So yeah, and it's fun. I love what I do. I mean, I don't think any of us that write, if we hated it, I don't think we would put ourselves through all of what it takes to write,
Yeah.
because it is a time consuming, lonely, it's me in a room by myself all day, um,
Right.
so I don't think I don't think any of us do it if we don't love it, because it's a lot of work.
Right. Definitely, definitely. So, like, what's one thing that you would say, like, or what stage in the process of writing where you would kind of gives you more gray hairs than you like it to?
Yes, when I started, now I've been doing this about 30 years. So
Right.
I did, yes, it was not all this. It was very dark
Right.
hair when I started. Yeah, my hair was about the same color as yours when I started.
Right.
um, but it's I didn't start doing it full time. I had two bouts where I did it full time. In 2009, I did it full time for a couple of years before and then I eventually went back to a day job. And then I got laid off from the day job I had in 2016.
Mm.
So from 2016 to now, I've pretty much been doing it full time. So doing it full time, that's where the gray hairs come in, because when you're not just a writer, or in your case, you're not just a writer or just a publisher. You're a small business,
Right.
and I'm a one man band, so I'm having to do all of the business stuff as well,
Mhm.
which is all fine, and I don't mind doing it. But when you're doing that, you're not writing. When you're being
Mm.
a publisher, you're not being a writer. When I'm
Right.
yeah, so when I'm making travel plans and all that stuff, it's great, but I'm not. You look down and you're like, oh, I've been working for 6 hours and I haven't written anything.
Right.
I need to go write. That's where the gray hairs come on. It's getting it all done. Uh, my life is very deadline driven because I work for publishers.
Yeah.
So deadlines are important. So making sure, I mean, I like everybody. I take time off when I need it. Usually, but it's a scheduled thing. I know, you know, I want,
Right.
I need a day off, or I'm going to go to the movies, or I'm going to go have lunch with friends. I'm taking this day off. I know
Okay.
ahead of time so I can work extra.
Yeah.
Because as long as you meet the deadline, so that's where the gray hair comes in, is making those plans
Right.
and making sure that you're on track and you're meeting the deadlines. You're not missing. You're doing. And then there's edits and all these other things that
Mm.
you're kind of juggling. Oh, I'm writing this thing. I got to stop because I got edits on this other thing I turned in a month ago. The edits
Right.
come back, you have to stop, do the edits, because
Yeah.
edits usually have a short window,
Right.
turnaround window. So you stop, you do the edits, you send those back, you go back to work on this, and then here's a galley proof. You stop, you do, oh, here's a cover you need to. There's a lot of that kind of stuff. So you're doing a lot of juggling back and forth, and sometimes that can throw you off balance or out of
Right.
the story. And so yeah, so learning all that stuff was kind of the stuff that made all this go gray. So
All
yeah.
right.
At least it's
So,
still there. I haven't pulled it out yet,
right. All right. So, last question before we kind of wrap up and, let you do a little bit of promotion. What's one piece of advice that you would give to other writers, being in the
Mhm.
business as long as you have?
Sure. Well, I actually have two of them. One of them's really simple. Have fun with it. Do, you know, write what you enjoy to start, especially if you're just getting started. If because you don't want to. I always tell people it's like if you chase a trend, if vampires are hot right now, and you write a vampire novel, but you hate vampires, and that novel becomes successful, you find yourself writing vampires for the rest of your life that you don't like.
Mm,
So start out writing what you enjoy and see where that takes you. And then the other one is make a plan. Have a plan. This is hard won advice. This is hard learned advice for me because I didn't have a plan when I started. But decide what you want to do. Not every writer wants to be a full time career writer. Some people
mm,
do it as a hobby. Some people want to do it part time around a job and just get books published when they can. And there's nothing wrong with any of those paths.
mm.
Decide which path you're what your goal is, then set goals to get there. But don't just go, I'm going to start here. My goal number one is to become a New York Times best-selling author. That's that shouldn't be goal number one. You should be goal number one should be finish the book or finish this first
Right.
draft, and then set attainable goals and work. Don't work toward the finish one. Work toward just the next one, and that will seem a lot less daunting. And then and then celebrate it when you finish a book. That is worth celebrating.
Right.
I don't know the real percentage, but it's a large percentage of people who start books that never finish them.
Right.
So the fact that you finish something is
Mm,
absolutely worth celebrating. Then you go on to the next stage, which is get it polished, get it tightened up, then
mhm.
submit it or find an editor, publish it yourself, whatever your goal is. Are you going to try
Right.
to find an agent? Or are you just going to publish it yourself? Or, and then work toward those. And that will alleviate some of the headaches because you're not worried about sales at that point. You're worried about get the book done, make the book
Right.
as best it could. And so yeah, that I think is great advice that I wish I'd have had earlier.
Right. 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 All right. So that's pretty much it for this interview.
Thank
So,
you.
gonna give you the opportunity to just go ahead and promote yourself and tell people where they can find you and see some of your work. So, take it away.
Cool. BobbyNash.com is my website. There's links to everything there. I am on all the social medias. All those links are there as well. Facebook, Instagram, etc. It's all of them. I think I'm on most of them. But you can find me there. On my books are at the usual places: Amazon, Barnes and Noble, bookstores. I have a store. You can buy autographed books directly from me. A lot of if you go into your favorite bookstore, they can, if they don't have it, they can order it. But
Mm,
there's links and write-ups on my website there. Uh, my publishing company is called Ben Books, BEN-books.com. And there you can see the books that I do myself, which is some of these that are on the posters here behind me. Yeah, but I'm out there. Feel free to stop by, say hello, and I hope you'll check stuff out.
all righty. Well, I'd like to thank you for coming on down and interviewing with little old Seven Story Publishing.
My
And I'd like to,
pleasure. I had a good
oh,
time. This is great.
hey, I'd like to thank the one person that poked their head in. We love you, and we'll see you on the next one. And that's all for now, folks. So check out Bobby Nash at bobbynash.com and Ben Books, BEN-books.com. And until the next one. All right.